Walleyes are probably the most popular fish through the ice. I'm going to show you a few things and my top 3 baits that I use to catch them. The first thing I think is really important when ice fishing for walleyes is your initial hole pattern. All right, so what happens in these shield waters is generally these fish spend the daytime out in slightly deeper water. And then what they'll do come evening is they'll push up onto the shallower parts of structure and feed. So what I like to look for is shallower sloping structure, whether that's like a finger, an underwater point that sticks out off an island, whether it's a hump in the middle of the lake, whatever it is, whatever structure it is that you're fishing, you can look on a topographical map and see which sides slope more gradually. And typically that's where I focus in on. I've done a few seminars in the past, and that's one of the main points that I bring up is you may be in the right depth, but if the portion of the structure that you're fishing drops too steeply, generally the fish aren't on that part of the structure as much, at least that I find. So what I look for is the shallower, more gradual sloping portion of the structure, and that's where hole pattern comes in. So drilling a bunch of holes is important. It's a beautiful day out today. It's about -8, sunny, no wind, so we can fish outside. Might pop the hut up later if we find a nice concentration of fish, or at least where the fish are rolling through. But for now, I'm just gonna fish around until I find, a hole or a depth that I want to key in on, and then maybe I'll pop up the hut. But what's happening is these fish are moving in from the deeper water, and they're slowly gonna move up and up and up onto the structure. So that's typically why I target these things late afternoon. It's about 3 p.m. and I just got out here. This is the start of prime time in my opinion. And so what I do is I drill a bunch of holes ranging from about 29 feet up to about 20, I'd say. And what'll happen is you'll actually be able to track the migration of these fish going from the deep water up to the shallow water. So right now at 3 o'clock, I'm in one of my deeper holes. And what'll happen is I'll start catching them in this 29-foot deep hole, and then they'll start to move up shallower, and actually this hole will stop producing, and then my 28-foot hole will start producing, and then that'll die down, and then my 26, my 25. And I'm able to track these fish as they move up shallower and shallower up onto the structure. The smaller fish generally go up first. You'll catch, your smaller fish, and then as the evening goes on, the bigger fish will start to move up, and that's typically when you get the larger fish. The neat thing about that as well is perch are always a couple steps ahead of the walleyes. So if you're on bodies of water like I am today that have a lot of perch in them, the perch will keep you entertained, and it's a good sign that the walleyes aren't far behind.
Just barely bumped it.
That's a good sign though. When you start seeing the small ones pull up, the bigger ones shouldn't be too far behind.
Looks like a decent fish, but he just nipped at it. Missed him. Here he comes. 2 of them. Got him that time.
There's another one down there. It's on the VMC Rattle Spoon. What do we got here? Nice. Look at that. Choked the spoon. Got a little minnow head on this. Not necessary, but I think it can help. Nice little walleye. Oh yeah. Let this guy go. What's happening right now is these fish are just cruising in. We have the live facing this way, so it's actually pointed up onto the shallower part of the structure, and then the back is pointed out towards the deeper water. And just like I was saying earlier, we're watching these fish swim in from the deep side. Slowly, they'll just slowly come along the bottom, and then right towards our baits, and then we'll, hook them or not. But it is neat to see them coming in from the deep side, just slowly working their way up.
He's zipping over. Got him.
Nice one. Nice little walleye. Getting bigger. Kind of pinned his mouth shut here. It's another victim to the VMC rattling spoon. It's feeding good. Alright guys, what I'm going to talk about here is my top 3 categories, top 3 baits for walleye fishing through the ice. The 3 different categories would be, number 1, some kind of jigging bait, Jigging Rap, Snap Rap, Jigging Shadow Rap, Jigging Rap Magnum. Second bait would be any kind of jigging spoon. So here's a VMC Tingler spoon, VMC Flash Champ, VMC Rattling Roach spoon. Third category, you guys hear me talk about moping all the time. In the summertime, moping for walleyes, hanging minnows, deadly technique, and it works just as well through the ice. You hear me talk about hanging minnows and moping for lake trout all the time, and it also works just as well for walleyes. You just downsize a little bit. That would be category number 3. When I say categories, I mean each one of these baits does, its own job, but there are differences within each category. So I could go with a Snap Rap. It's going to have a little bit different action than this Jigging Rap. Then I could go with, a Jigging Shadow Rap, which is going to have a more delayed glide. And each one of these jigging spoons is going to behave differently. And so you can dial in and figure out what these fish want. Maybe they want the big wide wobble of the Tingler spoon, or maybe they want, a little bit more vertical, two-dimensional, poppier kind of action of the Flash Champ. And that's really up for you to decide and play around with. Different profiles. You can play around with different colors, head weights, head shapes that make these baits behave differently. And then I should give you an honorable mention, which is, just minnows through the ice. A minnow on a jig head, a slight little jig head, or a single hook with a split shot is absolutely deadly. And you guys have to remember, up here where I'm fishing, we're allowed 2 rods in the wintertime, so take advantage of that second rod. If you have a Jigging Rap on one of your rods, have a spoon on the other one, or a live minnow or a moping bait on the other one, and spread it out, because you will find throughout the day that maybe today they're going to prefer a size 5 Snap Rap, and tomorrow it's a little sunnier, maybe something's different, and they would prefer the flash of like a Tingler spoon. And then another day they might prefer a spoon and a small profile, but they might prefer the slightly less flash of the Flash Champ here. And so you really never know, but you have to play around. Same with the minnow bait. Maybe they want bright pink or chartreuse, or another day they might want really natural colors. So these are my 3 categories. Where I would say is a good start though, if you're gonna just start out, get a size 5 Jigging Rap. You can put a little minnow head on the bottom. The smaller ones will come up, maybe bite this bottom piece. The bigger ones will come overtake the whole thing. But get a size 5 Jigging Rap or a Snap Rap. As for the spoons, I would say get like a 1/4 ounce VMC Flash Champ. That's probably my highest producer. They all work and they all have their time and a place, but I often find myself reaching for the Flash Champ. caught a whole bunch today on the rattling spoon though, so that's been really working today. I'm probably not going to switch up unless the fish tell me I need to. And then I would say get a pack of Crush City jerks, rig it on like a 1/4 ounce head, 1/8 ounce head, and that should do the trick. If you have those 3 bases covered, you'll do pretty well for walleyes through the ice. That's what I bring. I never go out on the ice without those, and they work for me, so give it a shot. The way I'm fishing this jigging spoon right now is pretty subtle. I do have a minnow head on the bottom, so there's a little bit extra scent on there. We're not necessarily fishing. I mean, we could stumble into some really nice big walleyes in here, but generally speaking, they're that 17-inch range, and so fishing relatively subtle, little pops and then little shakes. When they come in, often I don't move it very much, and that's the same as the Jigging Rap. I'll actually give the Jigging Rap little pops, just so it swims up, darts out, and then kind of settles back down in the middle. Then you can buck it on the spot. Little pops. And then, believe it or not, I actually fish the minnow bait relatively similarly. Obviously, they're all a little different, just kind of the way you try and swim them. With the spoons, I'm sort of envisioning a little flutter up and then comes back and settles in the middle, and then you can shake it there and kind of buck it on the spot. With the Jigging Rap and the jigging style lures, what you're trying to do is get it to kind of shoot out to one side and then glide around in a bit of a circle, then come back and settle. And then with the minnow style baits like the Crush City jerk, often you just hang it there and don't really move it at all. That profile and even the micro movements that you have in your hand cause that tail to shake just enough that it looks alive and looks natural. And yeah, the moping technique, the minnow bait, you really don't move at all. But that's how I'm fishing them. Right now I have the rattling spoon on, and so I'm just trying to buck that up, get those rattles to make a little bit of noise, and then when I call a fish in, then I'm not moving it much at all. I'm just kind of shaking it on the spot and calling them in. You can take it away just a little bit if that's what they want, but oftentimes you just flick it a little, call them in with a bit of action, and then once they key in on it and start to come up in, you can just shake it on the spot, and that's how I've been getting them to go. Another little tip is I love using fluorocarbon for ice fishing. If I need a strong drag in a spinning reel, I'll run braid, like usually for lake trout or big pike, but basically walleyes and anything down, I run 6 to 8 pound fluorocarbon. You can bump it up to 10 if you know you're on really big fish like on Lake Winnipeg, but I love running fluorocarbon because you get a little bit of stretch, which helps you keep the fish pinned with the shorter rods, but also the main thing is that it doesn't ice, or it doesn't really ice as bad. The ice that does build on it just kind of wipes off, as opposed to braid, you have to rip it off with your fingernail. And actually even mono, you'd think mono and fluoro are probably pretty similar, but actually mono's porous, and that's one of the reasons why it floats, or it doesn't break the surface tension, is it's actually porous. I'm sure you've heard people say you got to wet your mono, get it wet before it fishes right, and that's because it actually absorbs a bit of water, where the fluorocarbon doesn't absorb water, and so the candling and in the cold weather the ice doesn't build up. And then also fluorocarbon doesn't pull water up through your guides and into your reel nearly as badly as any of the other lines. But fluorocarbon, it's probably the most annoying material to use because it can get coily and it can get kinky. But I run an inline reel, and the cool thing is these inline reels are actually about the exact same diameter as the spool of fluorocarbon that you buy it in. And so if you reel it on in the same direction that it was on the spool, it's actually sitting in a really natural position, and it's going off the reel and back on the reel in the same direction all the time. It's not like a spinning reel where the line's coming in and then it's being spun in a different direction around the bail, or around the spool. The bail's spinning it around the spool, and what'll happen is when you put fluorocarbon in that unnatural position, it'll actually coil up, and that's when you get all those coils that come out. You don't want that, because that basically acts as a big spring, and then you have no feeling to your bait. So you want to use you want your fluorocarbon to be as straight as possible, no kinks, and an inline reel allows me to achieve that. So I get to fish, I get to, you know, I get all the benefits of using fluorocarbon with very minimal, if not any of the downsides. So fluorocarbon on an inline reel is a pretty lethal setup for ice fishing. Got him. I was just about to switch my bait. Clearly this is working. Another one on the rattling spoon. A little smaller than the last one. But look at that. Chomped it. Pink. Nice bright colors.
My line hooked on the edge of the ice there, and so it kind of like flipped up funny, but
we're losing light here. The sun's setting outside. That's a nice, really nice walleye. Another one on the spoon. Alright, that's a wrap. It's starting to get dark. The snowplow went by on the ice road a couple times, and we're anticipating the bank to be a bit bigger, so let's hope we can make it through. Alright guys, that wasn't too bad. Made it through the bank. We're on the main ice road. This is the home stretch. That was a good night of walleye fishing. Found a few fish. Fished until dark. Yeah, leave some comments down below if you have any questions, and thanks for watching. It's chilly, so I'm gonna get in the truck.